What's up fellow hunters, Nox here, welcome to another exciting build video. Today we're going to talk about endgame hunting horn builds. I will show a non-augmented budget version first that is super easy to make, and a upgraded version with augments right after to give you some extra ideas. Let's go. Sound of War. A high damage build for all elements that doesn't rely on Dereliction. A talisman with dragon conversion level 2 and 1 level 2 slot is all you will need to get the essential skills. If you don't have one yet, you can also use an attack boost level 3 talisman with good slots. And those are super easy to get now. I'm using the Aurora-Canth hunting horn as example here, but we're gonna see all of the best weapon choices after the build. Since this is an elemental build, the first thing we're gonna address is the massive collection of elemental skills. With everything active, my element went from 121 all the way up to 258. That's more than double. Starting off, we of course have level 5 of whatever element we choose. Then we have Element Exploit for a 10 to 15% increase to elemental damage when attacking weak spots. Critical Element for another 15% increase when landing critical hits. And Burst will increase elemental damage further when landing continuous hits. Depending on the weapon's element, we also get to add Kushala or Teostra Blessing for an additional 10% element on top. This will have to be added with the Blessing decorations once you have additional slots. Next is Dragon Conversion to give us even more element attack. Since we already covered the skill in detail in previous videos, I'm just gonna give a short summary. On the blue scroll, we get plus 15 to every element resistance after landing a certain number of hits. And on red, all of your combined element resistance is transformed into element attack at a rate of 25%. This will give us another big increase to element attack. Since we're using Dragon Conversion, we of course want to have the Furious skill as well, for the amazing synergy between the two skills. Having that will increase the element damage even further. But because this is an augment-free budget version, Furious will have to come into play later. And then we also have Blood Awakening. This will increase raw attack and element when regenerating a certain amount of HP by landing attacks. At level 3, we get 15 attack and element when recovering 50 HP. And after recovering 150 HP, that buff gets increased to 40 attack and 30 element. This will last for 30 seconds after activating the first stage of the buff. That's an insane damage boost. You don't have to be missing any HP to activate this either. As long as you deal enough damage to recover the required amount of HP, the skill will activate. So you can even activate this when your health is completely full. We have two ways to regenerate HP with attacks. The first one is making use of Blood Right. This will give us health regeneration anytime we attack a broken monster part. And the second way is of course by having Blood Blight. We get affected by this when fighting afflicted monsters. Having Blood Blight will add a health regeneration effect to every one of your attacks. All those things combined result in ridiculously high elemental damage output. Aside from the massive element skill synergy, we have a bunch of other damage factors. Attack boost level 4 will give us a nice increase to raw attack. And we also have a super high affinity setup. Weakness Exploit, Maximum Might and Bloodlust will allow us to reach 100% affinity on weak spots. Along with that, we of course have Critical Boost to get the most out of our critical hits. For sharpness management, we have Master's Touch. This will give us an 80% chance of not losing sharpness when landing critical hits. This goes perfectly with the high affinity setup. The build comes with 2 levels of handicraft, but that can be increased further if you like. The Horn Maestro skill will come with all of the builds. This will increase shockwave damage and the overall performance speed of melodies. We have all that without even augmenting the armor pieces. I will show some augment recommendations like this after each build. The first thing you want to aim for is of course Furious. As we addressed earlier, this will have huge value for the build. After that, you can go for slot upgrades or any of the level 2 skills on the decoration list. Getting 2 levels of Dragon Conversion will let you swap out the talisman. Now we're gonna take a look at my version of the build that includes augments. We'll get to what exactly my augments are in a moment as well. The first thing I did was of course adding Furious into the build. In my case, I'm using a Furious level 3 talisman because I got Dragon Conversion as augments. The Coalescence is a welcome bonus, but absolutely not required. Next, I maxed out every single one of the elemental skills and added Kushala Blessing for the additional 10%. The upgrades to the build greatly increased the overall damage output. We also have very nice bonus skills, like Intrepid Heart, Slugger and Powder Mantle. You might have noticed that I swapped out the waist, but that barely makes any difference. This is what my current augments are looking like if you're trying to recreate a similar version of the build. The first thing I had to get was Dragon Conversion since I swapped out the talisman. Due to using a different waist, I also had to get Bloodlust. Keep in mind that you don't have to do that if you're using the armor parts from the budget version. After that, all I did was aim for any of the level 2 skills on the decoration list or decent slot upgrades. By the way, the Element Exploit skill does not have to be maxed out. The sweet spot is at level 1, so you can add anything else you like instead. Before we get to the next build, let's take a look at some of the best weapon options for element. We have Aurora Cath for ice, Amatsu for water, Flaming Espinas for fire, Primordial Malzeno for dragon, and Kezu for thunder. These are the highest damage options, but feel free to use any elemental hunting horn you like. There are plenty of great options to choose from. Pick whichever you personally like best. Keep in mind that you want to add Iron Shell decorations for water and ice, and Flame Scale decos for fire. Otherwise, use the level 1 decoration slots for anything you like. For the Rampage decoration, I personally stick to the anti-species decos most of the time when using Hunting Horn. Next, we have another super high damage element build, Valhalla's Call. If you're hunting something with difficult body parts to break, this build is going to be the more consistent damage option. I'm using the same hunting horn as example again, but just like the previous build, you can use this with any elemental hunting horn. The budget version uses a dragon conversion talisman just like before, but like I showed at the start of the video, you can use a different talisman as well. Just make sure to get dragon conversion with augments in that case. The base elemental setup is very similar to the Sound of War. Max element attack, element exploit, critical element, burst, Kushala or Teostra blessing, and dragon conversion. And of course, we again want to add Furious into the build later as well. But then we have one big difference. Instead of Blood Awakening, we're now using the Dereliction and Strife synergy. With everything active, my element went all the way up to 267, which is massive. Dereliction will slowly drain our health but give us additional raw on the blue scroll. At level 1, we get 15, 20 or 25 additional raw attack depending on the number of Curio flying around us. And since Dereliction will leave us with constant red health, this will automatically activate Strife. At level 3, Strife will increase our element by 15 to 20% depending on how much red health we have. We always get at least 15%, even if it's just the tiniest bit of red. And as a nice bonus, Strife will also give us 10% affinity at all times here. By the way, you can use a gourmet fish and eat for the super recovery dango to slow down the Dereliction health drain. To increase our damage further, we again have attack boost level 4 and a big stack of affinity based skills. This time the affinity comes from weakness exploit, Strife, critical eye and maximum might. Along with that, we have critical boost level 2, which can of course be increased further if you want. We also have room for the inspiration deco. This will increase our attack by 10 for 20 seconds when using an item or melody that affects allies, making the skill a perfect fit for the hunting horn. For sharpness management, we again have Master's Touch. As a bonus, we have Intrepid Heart for safety and a few beneficial side skills like Horn Maestro, Latent Power and Resentment. The augment recommendations are actually the exact same. Number 1 will again be adding Furious into the build for the synergy with Dragon Conversion. After that, you can try filling in the gaps. A good way to do that would be aiming for any level 2 skills on the decoration list or slot upgrades. Aside from that, you can freely add anything else you might like. For the upgraded version of the build, I personally switched out quite a few parts. This allowed me to max out a lot of the elemental skills and add a few additional things. I now have Coalescence and Mail of Hellfire level 1 as additional damage increases. Getting Bloodlust will set us at 100% affinity on weak spots, even though I lost Critical Eye. We can now also fit in a level of Bloodrite, which has great value here. It's going to make playing with Dereliction a lot more comfortable. And it also helps activate Blood Awakening level 1, which we now have as a bonus. The overall damage output has gotten a significant upgrade. I highly recommend having both this one and the Sound of War build in your loadouts. That will give you a max DPS option no matter what you're hunting. This is what my current augments are looking like. The necessary ones in my case are 2 levels of Dragon Conversion and 1 level of Strife. Keep in mind that you won't need a Strife augment if you're using the budget version parts. The Mail of Hellfire augment is not necessary at all and can be replaced with anything else you like. Aside from that, slot upgrades are always great to have. Next, we have a super comfortable raw damage template that can be used with 8 different weapons. Before we check out the build, let's take a look at the weapon options. All of these have different pros and cons. You can pick whichever weapons you like the most based on melodies and attack power. Below them is a list of the most beneficial damage skills you can add to the build we'll see in a moment. Mail of Hellfire level 1 to 3 is great for all raw damage horns in general. Build up boost will of course be tied to the status weapons only, and Grinder S only comes into play if you're using either the Lucent Nargacuga or a Bushi Horn. Now that we've seen the weapons, let's take a look at the build. The Mixtape. Super comfortable, fun to use, and makes a lot of endgame hunts much easier. I'm using a talisman with attack boost level 3 and 3 level 2 slots. That is easy to get now, and plenty of other talismans will work here as well of course. I chose the Royal Order Hunting Horn to showcase the build, but like I said, you can pick any of the 8 weapons I showed a moment ago. Since this is a raw damage build, the skills are quite a bit different here. We have max attack boost and peak performance for a big increase to raw attack. Then we again have a high affinity setup and max critical boost. The build also has Blood Awakening level 3, which will give us another 40 raw attack when the conditions are met. To make that easier, we have Part Breaker and Blood Rite. Powder Mantle, Burst and Slugger will increase the overall damage output and make knocking out monsters easier. Thanks to maximum defense boost, Blood Rite and Intrepid Heart, the build is incredibly tanky and comfortable to play. Especially when combined with a Hunting Horn that has melodies like Sonic Barrier, Divine Protection or Health Recovery. Your teammates are gonna love having a music playing tank that buffs everyone in difficult hunts. This build is absolutely stacked without having any augments. The augment recommendations are gonna be some of the skills we saw when covering the weapons. Aim for as many levels of Mail of Hellfire as you are comfortable using. If you're choosing a status weapon, build-up boost will of course be your next target. Aside from that, slot upgrades are the way to go. There's no upgraded version for this one since it will be entirely different for everyone based on their weapon choice. Raw damage Hunting Horn might not be able to outdamage Element in the endgame, but we can still make some incredibly fun and useful builds like this one. Make sure to check out the other builds for all kinds of weapons on the channel so you don't miss anything you might enjoy. Thanks for watching, take it easy, and I'll see you in the next one.